Hello everyone, my name is MansaMusa and welcome back to my channel, and today is a good day. Today we have a matchup between Tesla246 and Grimm. If you don't know who they are, they're perhaps the most well-known alt accounts on the entire site. Tesla246 known for playing Adder, and Grimm obviously Grimm. And the reason why they're so exciting in the community and why so many people like their games is because they're playing some of the worst COs in the entire game, and they're playing them at such an incredibly high level. I believe both these players are around somewhere between 1350 to 1450 rated players, so very, very strong players, and they're exclusively playing tier 4 COs, which are some of the worst in the entire game. Obviously, Adder is probably the best of tier 4. Some have argued he's maybe even tier 3, basically because of how good Tesla plays him. But Grimm and Grimm in general is definitely one of the worst CEOs in the entire game. So regardless, both these guys are incredibly talented. The fact that they're able to play these CEOs at such a high level makes for very exciting matchups. It's why they've been covered both on my channel in the past and on other channels as well. And to see them in a matchup against each other is a really exciting opportunity for me personally. I also know that this game was very popular in the community as well. I believe 60 to 70 different people were actually following this game live as it was happening, so there was a lot of interest in this matchup. And the game just ended a few days ago, so I'm very excited to be able to cast this now that the game has ended, and to cover it on my channel because I know there will be a lot of interest in the community for this game. With all that being said, that's the introduction of the players. I guess let's talk about this map for a second. This game took place on the map Don't Drink the Water. It is a classic mist-based map. I believe it's been in the map queue for a while now. I have covered a previous game on this map before on my channel. I believe that was the game with Bongus, which was a very different game, much more of a low-level game. But if you would like to check that one out, click up the link up on the top there. With all that being said, let's hop right into this game. Tesla246 versus Grimm on Don't Drink the Water. We start this match like most matches with just our standard infantry turns. There isn't going to be much exciting here for the first few days. There obviously is this decision based around these mountains in the middle, basically how fast you go to capture either this property here or this property. We saw in the Sammy versus Sammy matchup that I was talking about earlier on the Bongus game, I believe this is actually Sammy versus Kindle, that you can rush this lab and lead to kind of an HQ rush type game if you get this lab and then start pressuring this one up here as well as the purple player. But both because this is not a Sammy match and because these players are much higher level, we're probably not going to see that strat in this game. We'll have to be looking out for what Tesla and Grimm are doing in their early capture phases. Another interesting decision is going to be how fast are you going to be capturing this comm tower. Comm towers in general are very strong for Adder because once he gets that 20% power, 10% from the comm tower and 10% from popping his power, he gets very crucial numbers for his rolls. His infantry and tanks can 2-hit KO on cities. And for Grimm, the comm towers actually matter a lot less. The comm towers do get him to some very important thresholds, but he already has such strong power overall that he really doesn't need it. That's why he generally prefers maps without comm towers compared to someone like Adder, who definitely prefers them. But going into Grimm's turn here on day 3, we do see both players start to move out towards these mountain cities now, trying to establish pressure there. We'll have to be I'll be very interested to see where the first vehicle is built on this map. I think we're going to see it soon, not in this turn at least, by Tesla. Although he had the funds for it, I guess he's kind of waiting to see where Grimm goes and is going to respond to it. That's not a bad strategy against Grimm specifically because he has a lot of pressure. You want to be able to kind of respond to that and let your infantry do their job and get out the captures. If you're kind of letting Grimm have too much space early on, without really an ability to punish him, it's just 30% extra attack power, and that can be very dangerous in the early game. So I don't mind this kind of first vehicle skip almost by Tesla to respond to where Grimm is going to build his. But we do move out to Grimm turn, and we see that he does in fact build a tank here in the southern base, so he's going to try to be pressuring this area here. It's possible that he's trying to go for both comm towers, trying to deny Adder those very important numbers that we talked about earlier, getting that 20%. So I imagine we're going to see a vehicle response here by Tesla on the next turn from this base here. But we move out to day 4 for Tesla. We also see both players emphasizing getting the airports relatively early. Very important on a map like this where it's semi-low base count. Obviously, it's still a 4-base map, but because the bases are spread apart, to have battlecopters, especially in defense of your solo bases, this base here and this base can both sometimes come under pressure from the central bases, or you can kind of turn the tables on your opponent and send both these bases and this airport here to attack the two bases as well. So you do have some flexibility there, but it's very important that you get your battlecopters out to kind of give yourself that flexibility and also defend if needed. Additionally, this river here that cuts through the entire map is a very large barrier for something like anti-airs. The battlecopters can easily jut across here and get out of range of the anti-airs very easily, so you generally have to build multiple anti-airs to respond to a single battlecopter, and thus they're very good. Any map that you have to do that on, battlecopters are going to be a good purchase. That's also emphasized by how many forest tiles you have here in the center. It even slows down the anti-air even further. But we keep on going here for Tesla. We see the first artillery built in this game, and I want you to keep an eye on the artillery in this match. Tesla builds a lot of artillery throughout this game, and it's a very interesting tactic to me. I've never seen someone really approach Grimm Guy like this, where he doesn't try to get really necessarily in a tank brawl with Grimm Guy or try to tech up or build a bunch of neo-tanks or anything like that. He actually just decides to build a bunch of infantry and artillery and essentially say, my walling technique is better than yours, and I'm just going to overpower you with artillery, because at the end of the day, if you can't attack my artillery, then your units are just weaker. They have less defense. My artillery are going to be more powerful. So I'm not going to get into direct combat engagements with you. I'm just going to outrange you, outwall you, and win that way. It's almost similar to a way that you'd play like Grit versus Grimm, which is very interesting to me. So something definitely to keep an eye on throughout this match by Tesla. We also see a mech build here. Good build here, I think, to respond to this tank. I was critical of Bongus, again, in that previous game for building too many mechs. But I do like the mech specifically from this base. One, because it can hide in the mountain and help defend the capturing comm tower and defend that from these infantry coming in future turns. But also because this mech can also come out to defend some of these cities as well. So it has good coverage. This is pretty much the only base that you want to be building mechs from. These two bases are not going to be as useful. This one could have some protective uses, but it's going to be a lot rarer. So this is basically the one defensive mech base that you can actually build mechs from if you are so inclined. Another thing about mechs is that they're very good generally for adder players. Tesla has multiple replays before on other channels where he just shows how strong a adder mech can be, especially with power and superpower and with a critical mass of them. So very excited to see how he utilizes mechs in this game. But we keep on rolling out here for Grimm Guy. He moves his tank up again, potentially applying pressure to this comm tower or more towards these captures in the center here. And we move to Tesla's turn here on day 5. We get the comm tower cap, get some more caps over here in the south as well, and we see kind of the general shape that this map is going to take, where you're going to have this kind of diagonal line of troops here for purple, and the same here for yellow, so these two players, and it's going to be kind of circling in these bases here, and the real contested properties become these ones here around the lab over here, and then potentially some of these ones as well, depending on where the fight's going, whether it's going to be more frontal towards this base or more off towards the side, and you get kind of this diagonal line. It depends on the contested properties depending on the match that you have, but you are going to see kind of that matchup along these contested properties here and here. But he moves the artillery out. We see some more infantry builds and a tank response here down in the south. Tank a good buy as well. Obviously you need to respond to Grimm Guy's own tank in the area. The mech again can provide good defense there, but that's just for that isolated area. If this tank goes out and kind of front shifts away from the mech, which would be a smart thing to do, and try to threaten these infantry, you need a response, so the tank is a good purchase there. We do see Grimm Guy getting more aggressive on the north here towards the city here. Generally, as the yellow player, you maybe go for the city early, but you kind of realize that it's going to get flipped in towards the middle to later part of the game. So kind of going for this delayed is a little bit interesting here by Grimm Guy, especially with his weaker units. So it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how he plans to defend that city capture. Not just stopping it from being interrupted, it's not going to be interrupted this turn, but defending it in the future from a potential city flip. We see the tank come out, get the first hit of the game, knocking this infantry down on the comm tower to 3 HP. Nothing can interrupt this, and I believe that this infantry was kind of a relic of a previous capture. I don't want to go back and check. I will. Okay, I'll go back and check for a second to see if this comm tower cap happened on the previous turn or not. Did it happen? Okay, so it did happen on the previous turn. So this was actually, Tesla didn't leave the troop there, but because there's nothing that can actually punish this, this is a free hit for Grimm Guy here on the infantry. Potentially can move his infantry up on the next turn after this cap and clear it off, and then try to capture the comm tower, giving him to Tesla's 0. But we keep on moving out. We see an artillery response here by Grimm Guy into Tesla, and I actually kind of don't like this. I don't think Grimm Guy should be trying to go into sort of a indirect versus indirect battle. Obviously, Grimm's indirects are very good as well because they have that higher attack power. They're going to be just more powerful than other people's indirect units, but they're also much more weaker. And while you think that may not matter in general, because if artillery are getting hit, they're pretty much dead regardless of who your CO is, I think it does matter specifically for the infantry matchup. Infantry can get pretty reasonable damage on indirect units. They can get to like 1 or 2 HP off units per hit of the infantry on the artillery in normal matchups. But when you're facing, when you're playing as Grimm, that can become even more devastating, something like 2 to 3 HP per infantry hit. And then all of a sudden, you know, you have 2 throwaway infantry that you didn't think were a problem attacking your artillery. That artillery is down to 4 HP, 5 HP, and has to retreat or not be nearly as useful as it wants to be. So I don't think indirect units in general are great for Grimm Guy, or for just Grimm in general. I would like to see just kind of more of a tank presence and a battlecopter presence. Battlecopters are insanely good for actually both of these COs. So I think the artillery build here is maybe a slight misplay. Especially because he now is, well, I guess he couldn't afford a battlecopter. Yeah, he couldn't afford a battlecopter, but I don't think the artillery was the best play here. I probably would have gone tank with this money because he had the money here to build a tank and then try to focus for a battlecopter in a future turn. But we keep on going here for Tesla. He does decide actually to go ahead and start capturing this comm tower. This could partially explain why Grimm Guy built the artillery. I think he's going to try to interrupt this comm tower. This artillery is going to come to defend, but then the artillery will come in and help this comm tower not actually flip on a future turn. So we do see that here by Tesla. So this maybe explains his artillery build a little bit, but also just in the long term, I don't think it's going to be that good of a unit for Grimm Guy. We see a second artillery built here by Tesla, so like I said, this is going to be a focus for him in this game. We see the mech back up, provide great coverage. A mech can actually be kind of like a mini artillery if you're using it right. It has essentially the same effective range where, or just one less effective range, where if a tank gets too close, actually it is the same effective range because this mech can reach to this tile here, sit in the forest and attack the tank. So this tank is no longer in a safe space, just like it wouldn't be if you were having an artillery. So it's kind of a cheap man's artillery in that way. But we keep on going here to day 7 here for Grimm Guy. It's going to be a question of how does he want to try to pressure this comm tower potentially and also defend his own from this infantry and artillery wave here by Tesla. He gets a little unlucky, I think, on this roll here. Not on the return fire, he was probably going to take that much damage back, but I think he probably should have knocked this down to maybe 5, and it should have been like a 5-7 engagement, similar to what we see over here on the left, actually. But perhaps a little unlucky on that roll. He brings out the artillery to make sure that Tesla is not going to get this comm tower flip. This infantry is probably going to back up. The artillery will kill the infantry on the plains, and so it's not going to be great position for Grimm Guy. Yes, he's going to deny this comm tower flip, but he's going to lose an infantry in the process, and this infantry is going to survive to fight another day. Sorry, coming back in, the map got a little messed up there, but we'll keep on going in this match. The tank goes ahead and moves out to apply more pressure in this area, try to long-term threaten the pressure of the artillery. We move out, we interrupt this cap here as well. I think that's a good play, bringing another infantry to defend in case this infantry comes in and retaliates, or potentially tries to cap the city again. Very interesting here by Grimm Guy. He actually just abandons this cap fully. Even though this is on 10 HP, he could, you know, I guess sacrifice his unit here and keep the cap, but he's prioritizing unit count here by not going for this cap and just retreating his unit. But then you have to ask the question, why did you go for it in the first place if you were just going to abandon it? I think he probably underestimated the power that Tesla was going to have in this area with these 2 tanks and the mech. I think he's just trying to not overextend here and go for the city, but this was definitely it has to be a misplay to try to go for this city. Spend multiple turns to get the infantry in there and then try to cap it just to retreat your unit because of too much pressure in the area. So overall, I think Tesla is probably having a better opening game. We can see he has slightly more units, slightly more unit value. Yes, this is Grimm Guy's turn, and he's yet to build his units, so it's still, you know, by no means is this a won or lost game yet, but this is definitely a misplay here by Grimm Guy to try to go for the city and then have to retreat. So we'll have to see if he can recover from this somewhat, maybe subpar opening game, at least by his standards, you know what I mean, in a matchup like this. We see the artillery come out and kill the we see the artillery come out and kill the infantry on the plains here. Other infantry comes in and fully kills off this infantry on the road. Again, this is just kind of Grimm things where your infantry are not going to survive pretty much any damage if another infantry comes in and attacks. We see more infantry come out, providing space for this artillery to have free reign. We see a battlecopter build. Again, I think battlecopters are going to be very strong on this map, like I mentioned previously. We see the infantry come out, again, to be out of range of this artillery, and a mech build down here in the south to respond to these tanks. Again, if there's going to be any front shifting, which Grimm guy is definitely going to want to do at this point with multiple tanks and a mech coming out here from the north, as well as a battlecopter. We see some more infantry builds from the southern bases, and we pass it to Grimm guy here on day 8. But before we do, I just again want to mention, I do think it's very strong to be building this many infantry and artillery down here in the south. The infantry provide great walls that Grimm is going to have a trouble getting through en masse when there's just, you know, wave upon wave of infantry, and the artillery are going to do great damage against Grimm, again, because he has that weaker defense. Rolling into day 8 here for Grimm guy. We continue see some early caps up here in the north, a battlecopter down here in the south to again try to pressure some of this infantry in the area, I'm assuming. We see the tank come in and get pretty much a free hit here on the infantry. This is one of the downsides of having this kind of artillery strategy, is some of these infantry hits are pretty much going to be free. But again, I don't think Tesla's that worried about it when he has this kind of infantry wall en masse that he's building, because even a 3 HP infantry can still be a pretty good walling unit if it's kept kind of in the second or third line of the wall. Grimm guy goes ahead though and tries to get this comm tower flip off. Again, these infantry are probably going to come in and deny that, but it's going to be interesting to see if this becomes a point of pressure. We see an anti-air build down here in the south, and I think this is actually a little bit premature here by Grimm guy. Like I've talked about in my videos previously, when you have a battlecopter like this, especially on a map where he can kind of dart across rivers, you don't want to build your anti-air too early, because it can just kind of dart away and front shift away from that anti-air, making it kind of a bad buy, especially in the face of 2 tanks and a mech, which are going to hard counter it. So I do think this probably could have waited one more day, would have built another tank to provide pressure in the area, and then the anti-air on the next turn if the battlecopter did in fact come to the south. I think Grimm guy is just giving Tesla a free pass to move this this battlecopter over here to the left and pressure this tank over here on this base and some of the infantry as well. So I'm not a huge fan of this build, at least on this turn. We do see this tank come out here to the left to again try to apply more pressure to the artillery in the area, and we pass it back to Tesla on day 8. Going into day 8 for Tesla here, we see the tank come in and interrupt the comm tower cap over here. We see another tank come in and attack these infantry. So Tesla is actually kind of going in here. I wonder if he has a strategy potentially to try to get his side slip on the stern, though I kind of doubt it. I don't think he's going to be able to get enough power charge there, so it's going to be interesting to see what he does. He brings in the mech to some good terrain here to defend both of his tanks, but he is going to have to wall that off, because I think these tanks can still get a pretty good hit in here if he's not careful. We do see an interrupt of this city here. Tesla brings his own infantry out to capture the city as well, and we do see the battlecopter come out here and try to protect this area as well, so maybe that's why this anti-air is in the space, but again, it's still maybe a turnoff from being useful. I'm getting why this anti-air was probably more necessary than I first thought, but I do still think that Tesla can front shift this battlecopter over pretty much whenever he wants and kind of back up from this attack. I think Tesla is kind of playing into Grimm guy a little bit and making this anti-air purchase more valuable than it necessarily could have been. I think if he kind of more played defensively here for a turn, build up a few more mechs or tanks in the area, and then front shifted these battlecopter overs to try to provide mayhem over here on the more central to north side of the map, I think it could have maybe done a better job there. Try to bait out an anti-air from this base at least, if you are trying to attack this 2 base down here in the long term. We do see the infantry come in, and this is the attacks that I was talking about. That's why it's so devastating to build an artillery as Grimm. Just 2 infantry hits, and we knock this artillery down to 6 HP on a forest. It should have like a ton of defense here. If you're facing a normal CO, this would maybe do 2 damage to this artillery, but because you're facing Grimm, it just does so much. That's why I think artillery are just very weak as Grimm. We see the other artillery come in into, Grimm's artillery range, which should be a death sentence, but for a normal CO, but it's not going to be because he's knocked it down to such low HP. And we just see immense pressure in this area. Another artillery coming in as well, making sure that any unit that interrupts this city cap is going to get hit in the process, whether that be the infantry here on the road or from this mountain tile. It covers both with this artillery. We bring out some more infantry in anti-air purchased by Tesla here again. I think, again, both players are a little premature. I'm going to say I think both players are a little premature on this anti-air. Again, I think the battlecopter can come over here and front shift by doing this. I would probably wait a turn, but maybe that's why I'm not as good as these players on this anti-air purchase. But we roll into day 9 here for Grimm guy. We do see some nice hits over here that are going to be pretty much unpunished. I mean, this infantry can come out and attack this one. But again, if you bring your battlecopter over here, you can actually deny that entire tile square. So it will be interesting to see what Grimm guy does with his battlecopters. We do see the artillery go ahead and attack the Tesla artillery here on the force. It does build a lot of power charge, getting Tesla pretty close to a side slip. And this artillery is probably going to die in the process as well. What was this? This tile was knocked off, so there was an infantry trying to flip this comm tower, but because it got knocked off, Grimm guy now has free reign to bring his tank in and attack this tank on the plains, so that's what he does. Gets a nice 9-3 engagement there, brings in his anti-air to address the battlecopter, closes off the infantry over here on the plains, uses this 1 HP as a nice blocking tool, gets another nice 8-3 engagement here. Yes, both these tanks are in range of some mechs, but it's going to be kind of hard to see how much pressure they're going to actually have. But again, I don't think this is actually a great attack by Grimm guy here, because he's going right into Tesla's side slip. If we look at the range that this mech on the base has, you give it one more range from side slip, and this mech can actually attack this tank on the comm tower. And with the extra power by the comm tower and by the power, even with the defense of terrain by the comm tower, this mech is still going to do a bunch of damage. This mech can come in and attack this tank. So you can get a pretty hard punish on all these units without necessarily having to commit your battlecopter into the space that the anti-air is trying to defend. You could still front shift this battlecopter over if you wanted. So I'm not particularly a huge fan of this attack by Grimm guy. I think this is kind of the classic, actually, ironically, the error that most Grimm players have. I think he's getting too aggressive too early before he can actually fully kill off Tesla. He's doing unattack, or he's doing a attack, not unattack. He's doing a attack to try to get some damage in here, but he's not doing anything that can finish the job, and he's going to get counterattacked hard in this process. And that's very interesting to see, because that's normally how Grimm guy punishes his opponents. Grimm guy normally punishes that early aggression with a huge counterattack, but this time it seems like he's kind of falling into that same trap going up against Tesla here. We do see some more infantry cleared off, which is good. You're going to have to get through a lot of this infantry wall to attack these artillery. And the battlecopter come out to this tile as well. Interesting again that he doesn't want to protect his own infantry in the area. He is focusing more on the pressure towards these artillery in the north. We do see the anti-air build over here on the left. I think Grimm guy is potentially anticipating the front shifting idea that we were talking about earlier, and we pass it over here to Tesla on day 9. Rolling into day 9 here for Tesla. He does in fact go ahead and pop sideslip immediately. It was interesting to see that he doesn't try to go for any early engagements to build more charge. I think he's kind of recognizing that there really isn't a lot there. You could maybe go for an artillery hit if you are going to use this artillery, the 5 HP one, maybe attack this artillery here. But I think he's probably going to want to move that artillery back. So that's probably why he didn't go for that before popping the power. But let's see the power that this attack can really have for Tesla. So he comes in here with the extra range. With this infantry and tank is able to knock off this infantry on the road. He uses his battlecopter to go in and finish off the tank. So then this tank over here sacrifices itself against the tank on the comm tower. I think this allows space for the mech to come in and finish off the job, which is exactly what we see here with the mech on the base. This mech then with the extra range comes in and gets a nice engagement here on the infantry. The artillery actually does attack the artillery on the forest, and that is interesting to me because I think I would have done that before the power to build more charge. I think maybe it would have only knocked this artillery down to 2 HP potentially, but I don't think that's a major difference when you're talking about, you know, thousands of value. It could have been added to his power charge, so I actually don't agree with that by Tesla. I think you probably should have done that before the power. But we continue on with the turn. We clear off this infantry on the plains here with these 2 infantry over here. Finish off the artillery with the 5 HP one there, which potentially probably would not have been possible without the kind of power shenanigans we were talking about earlier. The extra range allows this infantry to get the capture over here on this city. We build a tank, get another engagement here with the infantry, and clear it off. Again, some of these are aided by the side slip. Get a nice 10-1 engagement here on the city, build another mech up here in the north. I know I talked about previously that mechs over on this side of the map aren't necessarily as good, and I do stand by that mech's going to take a while to come in, but again, it's slightly better as adder because you're going to need to power so fast. That mech actually has something like on average, 2.25 movement, something like that, because once every 4 turns you're going to get that extra movement and allow it to have more use cases. We move this mech over here on the south, kind of more towards the action. Again, it's a little bit slower than some of the other ones. We build another artillery to try to pressure this area further. And we pass it to day 10 here for Grimm Guy. It's going to be very interesting. Grimm Guy has both his normal power and superpower relatively in range to get. He can clear up this infantry pretty easily, use the anti-air to attack the battlecopter and get the super if he wants it. So it's going to be very interesting to see how hard that Grimm Guy is either going to commit this turn, or is he going to take what I would say is the reasonable step here, back up just a little bit, build some more unit count, and then go for a really hard push with his powers. So it's going to be interesting to see how Grimm Guy wants to handle it. We do see some of these infantry engagements here, including a sacrifice. That's a very classic sacrifice, the 4 HP into the full HP. You know that is a guaranteed sacrifice for pretty much any CO, not just a Grimm matchup idea. That allows the clear off of this infantry here on the plains. He does bring in the anti-air to kill off the battlecopter. We see this infantry come here to the lab to clear off the infantry on the road. This infantry gets a nice 8-3 engagement. So he is fighting a little bit here, getting a few infantry picks, but I don't think it's going to be really that good for him in the long term. These mechs can kill off this anti-air incredibly quickly, and then you bring in more battlecopters into this area. And I think you're just going to lose a lot of infantry by trying to overcommit here without really kind of any sort of plan. I think this kind of area, both players are kind of angling towards a game where the 2 base is actually the weak area, because you bring in the battlecopter and these 2 bases to pressure. And I think that Tesla is actually realizing this. He's building, normally you shouldn't build artillery on the weak side, but he is kind of building artillery over here to defend, along with a lot of infantry and mechs. And he's trying to aggress over here with battlecopters and tanks into this area. And I don't think Grimm Guy is necessarily reacting in the same way. I think he still thinks of this as his strong side, which, isn't unreasonable. This is the 2 base. But just kind of how this game is evolving, this is kind of becoming the weak side. And I think Tesla is reacting to that a little bit better than Grimm Guy is. We do see the tank come out and clear the space for the battlecopter to finish off the artillery. We do see a few more kills off of infantry in the area here as well. We see another tank build up here on the left side, and we can see the pressure that Grimm Guy is really going for. He is trying to make this northern area his strong side. He has 3 tanks, a battlecopter, and an anti-air to address what is just 2 artillery and an anti-air for Tesla in the area. So I think this is really good pressure, pretty strong pressure in this area. But he has to finish the job here, and if you're going to go for this attack, I think you should be pulling out, you should be pulling back over here in the bottom right and not going for kind of the attack on both sides that we often warn about in these replays. Rolling into day 10 here for Tesla. We see the tank come in, finish off the infantry on the plain style here, then back comes in and gets a nice A2 engagement here on the anti-air on the plains. This infantry comes in and along with this infantry actually interrupts his own cap here on the city, which is a bit interesting. But I think he's trying to clear off this space so that the tank can come in and finish off the anti-air, and then this mech can come in and get a nice engagement. So this is actually really strong play here by Tesla. You see him get a bunch of nice engagements while also building a wall to protect his own units from some of these tanks. That's something high-level players do at an incredibly, high clip, and something that they do very well. It's something I've talked about in some of my previous replays as well, as trying to maintain walls while attacking. Yes, he did have to interrupt his own cap to do so, but I still think this was a pretty strong play here by Tesla. We see another clear out of the infantry over here on the road, the artillery coming in place to prevent any re-aggression in this area as well, and I do believe that that is out of range of this tank. Yes, it is, so it's going to be in a good spot there. We do see Tesla starting to realize that, well, okay, maybe not. The anti-air does come in and sacrifice itself to kill off the battlecopter, but another battlecopter is not on its way, so it's not the worst thing to lose this anti-air. I think both players probably could build more battlecopters than they are. Maybe it's a funding curve decision, but I do think battlecopters, again, are very strong in this map, and they force your opponent to build more anti-air than they are going to want to, especially when you're in such a tank and artillery battle. I think, more battlecopters probably should have been built in this game. But that being said, I do think Tesla is recognizing that the top left for him, the 2 base here, is more of his weak side. He's pulling back some of his infantry, not getting into the fights that Grimm Guy was, and leaving his artillery in a good spot where they're both defending each other. And this artillery is actually also defending any potential attack on the anti-air. I do think Grimm Guy is going to go ahead and kill this off and then potentially kill the artillery as well. I still think this is at least some good engagements here, because this artillery will punish any potential attack here by Grimm Guy. Like I was talking about previously, Grimm Guy is recognizing kind of the lack of anti-air that's going to be in the area now, so he does go ahead and build another battlecopter. Decides to kill off the anti-air, using both tanks to do so. I think this would have been interesting actually if he did not do this, instead only used one tank to attack the anti-air and use the other tank to help clear off this artillery, and then use the infantry to attack the anti-air. Potentially, I don't know, I have to go to move planner to see how good that attack could actually be, but he just goes for the kill off of the anti-air and kind of takes his time going for the attack here on the artillery, and backs up a bit. He is now realizing that this is getting weak over here in the bottom right and does decide to back up a little bit, preserving unit count in the area. Builds a mech over here in this base, which is a little bit interesting. We're seeing a lot of mech usage here on this map by the high-level players, which is interesting because, you know, I clowned on the low-level game for doing this. So it's interesting that they're using mechs as much. Again, I can see it from Tesla. Adder is probably one of the best mech COs outside of Sammy. But it's interesting to see Grimm Guy go for it as well. I guess kind of just providing more coverage in a mountainous area where it's hard to get your tanks in can be useful for these mechs, and also a funding decision with some of these curves as well. Rolling into day 11 here for Tesla, and I think before we go into this turn, let's do the classic board state check-in that we love to do in this replay, to kind of provide a break for the commentary for a second and just check in about how the game's going for both players. So we see that Tesla is down 1 unit count, 26 to 27. So, you know, generally within a normal game sense, they're definitely not down or up in either sense. He has, what is that, 13k roughly? Yeah, 13k roughly less unit value, and income, he's just 1k behind. So really kind of normal progress there. He's not behind on any statistics. Again, because it's at the start of his turn, you would expect unit value to be down compared to his opponent. The really only defining factor in this game so far is income. We do see that Grimm Guy is up 1k income, and he is potentially trying to flip this city as well, which would make it a 3k swing if he is successful there. But obviously Tesla has artillery in space to deny that. If we look at other parts in the board state, I do think this is where it's actually advantageous for Tesla. I think he's applying more pressure down here in the south than Grimm Guy is. We see a bunch of units trying to pressure these two bases, and I think that Grimm Guy's own attack against Tesla's two bases in the north isn't going as well. There's more defenses in this area, more artillery, more infantry, and he has less units and less powerful units to come in here and actually finish the job. If we're looking at something I talked about previously, and I believe the Tesla versus Starflash game about effective unit count, we do see that Grimm Guy is up in 1 total unit count, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 infantry/mech units in this area doing absolutely nothing. I mean, you know, they're still alive. They can still potentially maybe get some cities here, maybe a city flip, but they're really not doing anything super impactful. So looking at effective unit count, this is maybe something like 21 to 22 effective unit count for Grimm Guy, which would actually give Tesla the lead in this game if you're looking at really impactful units in this game. But going into day 11 here for Starflash, sorry, not for Starflash, for Tesla, let's see what he can get done. So he clears off, what was that, the 9 HP tank with the artillery. Brings in infantry now to clear off the capping infantry on the city. Uses this infantry to clear out space to attack this tank. He also pops slide slip at this point. He did have the power ready. I forgot about talking about power charge in the analysis, but it was about equal for both players there as well. The tank comes in, clears off the infantry on the forest. This infantry comes in here on the city to knock this infantry down to 3 HP. So Tesla is going pretty in on this turn. I think this is actually a roll, whether this killed this infantry or not. I think he's going to try to bring his artillery in here and provide a bunch of pressure and just try to choke off Grimm Guy from this entire area, essentially make him put all of his units here and block each other in, which is very kind of an interesting strategy, especially as Adder, where, you know, you don't want to overextend as much your powers, and you might think that they give you that ability to overextend more than other COs, but, you know, you don't have your power literally every turn, so going in this deep is maybe a bit questionable. We're going to see how well he can actually work this. I do like the positioning of these mechs, though. They are going to be perfectly in range to punish any tank re-aggression here, as well as the artillery position. We see a tank and battlecopter built from these two bases, and the base in the airport here, to further this attack. And we see more defensive positioning of the artillery to defend his own two-base side. And we pass it to day 12 here for Grimm Guy. So Grimm Guy has both his power and his superpower available to him, so it's going to be very interesting to see how he responds to this. That was a pretty devastating power by Tesla if you look at it. He is down now roughly 9 unit counts, and we still have this effective unit count problem with like 7 infantry slash mech in the area not doing anything. That's still going on. So this is a pretty bad position right now for Grimm Guy. He's going to have a pretty powerful either Knuckle Duster, yes, the classic name, and then either Superpower, which is the Haymaker, to see if he can try to get back into this game. So let's see how A12 works out for Grimm Guy. He goes ahead with these kind of units I've been ragging on to get a unit capture there, or a city capture there. He doesn't, in fact, pop the Knuckle Duster, which is just the power. These infantry units come back a little bit, uses the tank to... Ooh, that is unfortunate. That was almost assuredly a roll, whether that killed or not. If it did kill, he probably could have brought his infantry to the city here to sit and protect his tank. Maybe retreating this infantry was not ideal. Maybe he should have just sacrificed it on the mountain to potentially confirm this unit kill, but this is a pretty unlucky roll here by Grimm Guy. He has to waste his unit here to knock off the infantry. And then, I think he wanted to put his tank over here on the city. It's now on worse terrain and now in range of this tank here. Let me make sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, it's in range with the power, but Tesla is... It's not in range normally, but it is in range with the power. But Tesla is pretty close to getting a power on his next turn as well. So it probably still is going to be within range of this tank over here on the base, which is pretty devastating, especially because I think Grimm Guy only wanted to put his tank over here on the city. We do see a nice 10-1 engagement over here on the mech on the left. So nice job moving away from these two mechs and the artillery. But again, this mech is going to be in range of this tank if Tesla gets this power. So that's going to be a really important decision here on the next turn, whether Tesla can get that or not. I do think he is going to be able to get it, though, based on where his power charge was last turn. We see another battlecopter built over here in the south. I do think this is good. Tesla hasn't built any anti-air to protect this area yet. I think this is the turn I would build the anti-air. I know I ragged on him earlier about building the anti-air too earlier, but this is definitely the turn that I would build it from these bases. You see that Grimm Guy is investing in two battlecopters in this area, and this one's already progressed towards this main fighting area. I definitely think a anti-air is warranted on this turn by Tesla. But again, very interesting turn. We do see that Tesla is just basically one bar away from his power, and I do think it's going to be worth it, maybe even potentially sacking some units to get it, to get the power here. It's going to allow this tank to come in and kill this tank, allow this mech to come in and finish the job, and allow potentially for some other engagements as well. So let's see what Tesla does on this turn. Goes for the 7-4 engagement here. Actually, he just uses this tank to attack the other tank that Grimm Guy put in range to go A3 here. Brings in this tank to get a 6-5 engagement. Uses the infantry to interrupt the capture on this city, and these two infantry to interrupt this city down here. Does in fact pop the side slip. Starts capturing this city over here in front of the mountain, just applying more pressure in the area. Brings his battlecopter out to provide some more pressure in this area. Try to potentially interrupt some of these caps because these mechs can't really do anything against a battlecopter. Builds another battlecopter of his own. Brings in the mech to finish off the job of the tank here on the plains. Bring in his own tank to finish off the tank on the forest. And brings in his artillery as well to completely lock down any attacks on all of these tanks. Very strong here. I think the only space that Grimm Guy really has to attack this tank is over here on this plains. But again, you're just losing so much ground over here. You have 5 units to Tesla's, what is this? Something like 10 or so in the area, even more if battlecopters start streaming in. You need to build anti-air, and you can't afford to build anti-air because you have just all these units coming down on you at once. So I think Grimm Guy, this is tough. I think you need to build like a medium tank to start wiping out some of these tanks. But if you do that, the artillery is going to pummel you, so it's not a great play. Also, the infantry can try to just bully you and prevent you from actually ever reaching the tanks by just making you attack the infantry. So it's going to be really hard to try to hold on to this area by Grimm Guy. I think he needs to apply, major pressure onto Tesla's own 2 base in the north if he's really going to have any sort of counterplay here. Either that or he needs to find an attack route, but as it stands now, it is just not good for Grimm Guy. But we keep on going here. More defensive moves here by Tesla in the north. Grimm Guy does get the city cap off, so he has a 2k income lead now, which is not bad, but again, this city is under threat here, as well as potentially this one. A neutral base versus a flip, obviously, but the income game is probably going to get leveled out as the game goes on. The battlecopter comes in and finishes off the tank on the plains here. We bring in this other battlecopter to help defend as well. Infantry comes out and kills off the infantry that interrupted the cap. We do see Grimm Guy builds the anti-air. in response to the battlecopter. Again, maybe this is one turn too early, I would say. I think this is one turn too early. Yes, because the battlecopters coming in is dangerous, obviously. And, you know, previously I said this was the right time to build the battlecopter. The right time to build the anti-air, but because you were so far pushed back, the battlecopter is only going to have use case in this area if it gets directly on the front line here, like over here. So I think you can wait one more turn for the anti-air. I think what he probably should have built this turn to respond to all these tanks is actually a medium tank in this area. Yes, it could get bullied by the artillery, that is true. And in general, Grimm as the player doesn't want to, tag up. He doesn't want to take up. But there's just too many tanks in this area. You have 3 and a mech that I think tanks are just not necessarily as good of units. One medium tank probably would have stopped this attack just maybe slightly better than tank anti-air. And then I probably would have you'd be forced to build the anti-air on the next turn. But again, that's my opinion. I'm not as good as either of these players though, so, you know, who am I to be criticizing necessarily all of these plays? We do see the tank come out here, and this was basically the semi-free area that had, yes, this mech is actually covering, so it's not completely free, but he does get a nice 10-1 engagement there. And we pass it back to Tesla here on day 13. We do see the capture of this city here. That is a flip, so now it's 20 to 20k, and this city is probably going to fall on the next turn to give Tesla the actual unit count, the income advantage. The battlecopter comes out and attacks this mech here, weakening this wall a little bit further. Also preventing any of these units from coming back to the north with any sort of speed. Yes, they can cross over these rivers, but it's a little bit interesting there. We haven't seen really any pressure towards this lab, but that would be kind of a good lab take play if he is going to bring, let's say, this infantry over to threaten that further. We see kind of this attack actually slow down just a little bit. He's definitely not abandoning this attack, but he is just slowing down a little bit. This anti-air and tank combo, I think, was threatening him just a little bit too much. So he slows down to build some more tanks to kind of strengthen this attack a little bit further. Also retreats in the north here. I think he's doing a better job maintaining the space than Grimm is. His artillery are being very strong in that way. We see the infantry come out here, kill off the infantry on the plains here. And the battlecopters are actually coming in now to try to provide some coverage from these infantry in this area. And this is actually a really interesting feign here by Tesla, because he is pulling away units that are trying to attack these 2 bases here in order to defend this clump of infantry up here in the north, because Tesla is attacking him. But I think Tesla can do a really good feign here where he actually sends his battlecopters down to the south and tries to strengthen this attack further, while simultaneously drawing these battlecopters away from the attack that they were trying to have and the pressure that they were trying to get in this area. So I think actually a really smart play here by Tesla that Grimm is potentially falling for a little bit by trying to overinvest too much in this area. I think maybe he just should have built potentially an anti-air on this base if he wants to defend against these battlecopters. Yes, they would run away to the south, but then they'd be running right into this anti-air, so it's not a huge deal. You could even front shift to this anti-air over here if you were really concerned about that. That might be actually the better play, but I think he could have kept his own battlecopters more towards this front and pressuring this area. But we keep on going. I'm going a little bit faster here because this replay analysis, I realize, is taking a little bit here. This is a bit of a longer game than I thought. We roll into day 14 here, though, for Tesla. He does have one more free turn of interrupts before this battlecopter is in range, so he uses that to kill off some more infantry. Builds another battlecopter up here in the north as well, again trying to just apply a bunch of pressure here. Retreats his units a little bit, just waiting for, I think, these battlecopters to finish their job of attacking these units up here in the north and then come to the south. Starts to move his walls a little bit forward in here now that he realizes the battlecopters and some of these other units are front shifting away a little bit. Grimm goes for the capture or the flip here on the city, but it's going to be really hard to actually flip this with this mountain right here in range. We see some of the Grimm battlecopters coming out as well. I think both players are actually building a lot more battlecopters now than they were previously, which is good. I think battlecopters, again, are pretty strong on this map. I do like the front shifting of this anti-air. Like I said previously, I think it is strong to respond to these battlecopters. But I don't like this. I don't think you need to necessarily be bringing your battlecopters over in this kind of way. I guess, yes, you want to try to stop any potential base attacks of these battlecopters coming in and attacking any unit on this base, but I think the anti-air is doing a fine job with that. I don't think you necessarily need to bring in your battlecopters to defend here. I think they should be more focusing on this attack. It's potentially possible that Grimm is just kind of abandoning this attack on the 2 base a little bit. I mean, this is a really hard wall to try to get through, so he may be just trying to diversify his range a bit more here. We used to see some more attacks on Grimm Guy's units up here in the north. The whole pressure here that was like 6 or 7 infantry has essentially been retreated over here to the left or / wiped out. And we didn't see the main goal of those units, which I think was to flip this city here. And because this threat has been neutralized, Tesla is now more effectively moving his units to the south here to again try to pressure this 2 base. He is backing up with this attack as well, which again I think is strong. You don't want to overextend on too many fronts, and we move into day 16 here for Grimm Guy. Rolling into day 16 here for Grimm Guy, and again I think we should do a unit check-in. We'll do it a little bit faster this time, but I think it's important to look at where the matchup is at this point. So Grimm Guy is down 9 unit count. That is very bad at the start of his turn. He's down about 20k income. That's definitely losing because he has 20k income. You want to be about half of that for total unit value. If you're talking in those measurements. So being down a full 20k, which is your income in unit value, is not great. And he is down 1k overall on the unit value situation, on the unit income standpoint as well. So Grimm Guy is definitely losing this game right now from a stats perspective. Looking at board state, yes, he is potentially going to get this capture down here, but he is getting pressured hard down here on this 2 base. While not really having a plan for these units. I think these units are kind of in no man's land where they can't come in, otherwise they're going to get attacked by these units over here, over in the right, and he doesn't have enough units between this attack yet to really pressure, you know, the 18 million different infantry / mechs that Tesla has in this area, all defended by these 2 artillery. So it's going to be a little bit hard for Grimm Guy to really have a cohesive plan here to find a good move, even with the the Knuckle Duster available to him. But we'll see how he does here on day 16. He brings his units out more. He is getting more defensive over here, which again I think is strong. I again would still like a tech up here, maybe a medium tank to provide some more coverage. I do think you potentially do need 2 anti-air to respond to 3 battlecopters. That is the correct ratios. But I do think, again, a tech up might be the play here if I'm trying to defend that area further. We see the 2 battlecopters and the anti-air front shift even more over here to the right, and I'm not a fan of this. I don't think you should try to be going for like a pincer over here on these units, because they can just front shift away or just, you know, beat this army before you can really have any advantage here. It's really hard. Grimm Guy is just not in a good position here. Like, long and short of it, he's just not in a good position here. I want him to try to attack this 2 base, but this is just so well fortified that it's hard. But trying to, you know, apply pressure over here is just not going to work. This base and the airport are going to provide plenty of coverage, and at any time Tesla can just front shift away and destroy your entire army if you go too far into this, and punish you for being too defensive in this area. So Grimm Guy is definitely playing in Tesla's court, as you will. Like, Tesla is owning this map state right now. But it's still, this is probably the best he could do, but it's still not good. You know, I'm criticizing him a little bit for being in this position and making, you know, plays in this position, but I'm realizing more like he's just in a lose-lose situation, I think, in this current map state. But Tesla still has to finish the job here, so let's see how he does this on day 16. We're rolling to day 16 here for Tesla. We do see even more pressure here, so he's bringing in his battlecopters kind of as I see frontline walls in this area. It's going to be pretty hard to get through those with your anti-air, and if you do, he's going to knock them off with your tank and just build in more battlecopters. So I do kind of like this in kind of an aggressive stance, and he is building more battlecopters to kind of further in that point. Brings in more of his units though, so again, like, oh, actually these anti-air aren't even in range. Oh my god, that stinks so much because of all of the forest in this area. These are actually frontline walls like I was talking about, but they actually can't even be killed at all. I thought this forest tile was impossible to reach with these anti-airs, but I thought he could at least get one here. Yes, knock off one, but not knock off the other. I thought that's what Tesla was going for, but it's actually even worse than that than I thought for Grimm Guy. So really devastating play here. It's one of the disadvantages of Grimm in general. Yes, he has so much firepower that he can attack you with, but he has no movement bonuses with his powers, which make him very easy to predict and kind of wall in. It's one of the reasons why COs like Von Bolt or Hawk can potentially get outclassed in Tier 1, not by Sasha, but someone like Max, like a lower tier pick, because they don't have any movement bonuses with their powers as well. You'll see that in certain matchups, especially in high funds, where Von Bolt is kind of a Tier 2 CO, not necessarily a Tier 1. But we keep on moving on. Again, Grimm Guy is just getting more defensive in this area, but I don't think it's going to work necessarily. I'm going a little bit faster because I don't think Grimm Guy has a lot of potential here on his attacks, but we do see something very interesting here, so I am going to back up How does Tesla finish the job here, right? Because this game is kind of entered a stall state. Obviously, Grimm Guy doesn't want to go in and attack. He doesn't think he can finish the job. He doesn't have a lot of opportunities to come in here to defend. But this is still a pretty hard attack for Tesla to execute to really finish the job here and win the game on the spot. So how does he do this? And the answer is he's going to try to get his power, but he does it in a very interesting way where Grimm Guy has left his anti-air in range of this battlecopter, which is kind of fun to say because like he's obviously trying to bring in his anti-air to actually airport lock this airport up here in the north and potentially multiple turns down the line, apply pressure towards his base, which I actually don't think is a bad idea. I think that's a good idea by Grimm Guy. But he's allowing the sack here on this turn specifically of the battlecopter into this anti-air to allow Tesla to get his power. And once Tesla has his power, he's going to have more firepower and more range to really finish off this attack. So that's what we see here on this turn. The battlecopter sacrifices itself into the anti-air. We see some more engagements over here interrupting the city flip. Again, this is all power building, I believe. Get some nice attacks here on the infantry. The anti-air comes in and clears off this infantry on the city. We see an engagement there, 8-4 on the tank on the forest. All these were with the units that didn't need the extra bonus of the power. But then he doesn't fight to get the power and he pops side slip, and this is going to allow kind of the finishing off of this attack. So with the extra range, this infantry comes in, provides good chip damage here on the infantry on the plains. I think this confirms this as a kill. I checked in the the move planner, and this was something like a 95-96 roll. Otherwise, like 96 to 105, something like that. Just the tank against the 10 HP with no chip damage. So there was a potential that it couldn't have killed, but with the 1 HP chip, it was a guaranteed kill. Meg comes in here, does a 9-4 engagement, is going to be able to finish it off with this infantry over here. This clears off the way for the battlecopter to come in and punish this artillery, knocking it down to 1 HP. Again, why I don't think artillery / indirects are that good for Grimm in general. We see the other battlecopter come in and attack these tanks, and this attack is just getting brutal for Grimm Guy. More tanks coming in and attacking the battlecopters, mechs defending everything, artillery defending everything. He only has 1 healthy anti-air to defend against these battlecopters, and this is just an absolutely brutal turn with side slip. It just shows how good Attis Powers can be. With this extra pressure here, knowing that he's going to be winning, he can afford to be a little bit more aggressive over here on the left. Again, not too aggressive, not going full out and attacking these tanks or battlecopters or something ridiculous, but just a little bit more, a few more tiles aggressive in the positioning here. Grimm Guy throws the Hail Mary, goes for his superpower here with the Haymaker. Sacrifices his anti-air to clear off space for this mech to kill off the tank. Uses this anti-air with a Haymaker, does 4 damage. It's so pitiful, this kind of matchup, especially with the problem is he's using Haymaker into a Tesla power, so he's just going to have even more defense there, or that extra defense is going to help in some of these engagements. Anti-air comes in and kills the battlecopter on the mountain. The tank finishes off this tank here on the forest. Other tank comes in and clears off the tank. All of these are great engagements for Grimm Guy, but it's just really not going to matter at this point. He's down 13 unit count, and these bases are going to fall probably on the next turn. Does punish some of this regression here by Tesla, but it's not going to be enough to really get a bunch of progress, I think. Battlecopter's coming in to attack these mechs, but the anti-air is going to be in range to punish. We do see a potential flip here, but I don't think this is going to matter unless, Grimm Guy's probably hope here is to get these lab flips, but I just don't see that happening before these bases fall. We pass it to day 18 here for Tesla, and let's see how he finishes off this game. So he goes in and gets a pretty hard engagement here with the extra defensive powers from Grimm's power. Just the 10-10 that everyone gets. He takes a lot of, return damage from the anti-air, knocking it down to 3 HP. But he is able to finish it off with the other mech. He brings in the anti-air to finish off the infantry, and now this tank is going to fall to the battlecopter and tank combo, and then this infantry can come in and capture this base. Or actually use the other infantry and then use this infantry to capture the city. So this base is falling. This base is probably going to fall on the next turn. Uses infantry to clear off some of the other infantry in the area. Uses the anti-air to kill off at least one of these battlecopters. He's probably going to build another anti-air on this turn. Retreats his other units. I think he probably did get, honestly, a little too aggressive here on the previous turn, but he is not going to fall for the same trap. It's not going to... Grimm Guy's not going to have enough units to really punish this any further. And now that this base is falling, that this game is pretty much over, Grimm guy realizes this and resigns the game. So super fun matchup between these players. Tesla246 and Grimm guy, like I said at the beginning of the game, are some of the most famous alts on the entire site. Having a match between them is super exciting to me personally. Really a joy to be able to cast it. I think what we really showed in this game, number one, Adder just has a great matchup against Grimm. Everybody knew that going into this, that Tesla probably had the advantage there. But Grimm guy has shown through multiple replays and just games on the sites previously that he has really understood this Adder matchup, and I think he's had really great games against strong players. I didn't actually cover this matchup, but I think Grimm guy just recently beat Poland in exactly a Grimm versus Adder matchup on From Morph to Wild. So, you know, don't think just because you're picking Adder into Grimm guy you're going to win. You're definitely, like, 9 times out of 10, you're still actually going to lose. But because Tesla is so good at Adder, I think he had an advantage in this. I also think because it's mixed base, Adder is even stronger. I think Adder, honestly, is like a tier 3 CO on mixed base maps. So I think that definitely had an advantage for Tesla as well. But overall, I think he just had a better early game. I think Grimm guy wasted time trying to go for this capture in this early game. In the middle game, he had a bunch of units over here that weren't doing anything. And then when it came down to, you know, what actually are the weak bases on this map, it changes game to game, but in this specific game, the 2 base was the weak side for both players. Tesla realized that faster than Grimm guy. He was able to attack this area and punish Grimm guy's aggression more than Grimm guy was for Tesla, while simultaneously defending his own area with artillery and anti-air better than Grimm guy was. But yeah, just coming down to it, I think they honestly played at pretty similar levels. I think Tesla just had slightly better tactics, slightly better understanding of how the game was progressing, and obviously the CO advantage as well. Adder, again, just being better than Grimm in Tier 4. With all that being said, thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is MansaMusa, and remember, when 2 alt accounts face each other, it doesn't matter what tier the game was supposed to be in. Bye, guys.